You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
So, what if everything that makes you a quote-unquote good employee today, your ability to execute tasks, hit deadlines, write code, what if all of that is about to become, well, the least valuable thing you do?
Right. It's a really intense thought.
It is, because work is changing faster than ever, and today we're looking at a profound shift in how you actually need to operate to survive all this.
Yeah, it really is a massive turning point. I mean, if you've been feeling lately like you're sprinting a marathon just to keep up with the sheer volume of AI tools dropping, like every single week, you are definitely not alone.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this. We have a very specific mission for this deep dive today. We're going to demystify the rapidly changing landscape of productivity, product development, and critically, where you fit into this increasingly AI-driven world.
Which is so important right now.
Yeah, and to do this, we're pulling insights from a couple of incredibly dense editions of the TLDR Product Management Newsletter, specifically from late May 2026, the 26th and 29th editions.
Right. But to really frame our discussion today, we need to look past the individual software updates. Because what we are really witnessing is a fundamental shift in how human value is calculated in the workplace.
Okay, wow, that sounds big.
It is. We're moving away from a world where your worth is tied to your ability to execute tasks, and we're moving into a world where your value is almost entirely tied to your judgment.
Execution versus judgment. I love that distinction. And before we even get into the specific tools driving this, let's look at the biggest philosophical shift happening right now, which is, well, the death of manual execution.
Yeah, RIP to doing things the hard way.
Seriously. Andrej Karpathy recently put out this really provocative statement. He said, point blank, vibe coding is obsolete.
Which is such a stark warning. But let's clarify what he actually means by vibe coding for a second.
Yeah, break that down for us.
So for the past couple of years, people have been using large language models, LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude, by just throwing vague instructions or, vibes at the prompt box and just hoping for a good result.
Right, like write me a script for a login page and then you just manually fix all the inevitable errors it spits out.
Exactly. You were still the one doing the heavy lifting to make it work.
Yeah.
But that era is officially over.
So what replaces it?
Well, we're entering the era of what's called agentic engineering. This is where AI doesn't just give you a snippet of code. It acts as an autonomous agent that plans, writes, tests, and literally deploys the whole feature.
Wait, it does the whole thing?
Yeah, end to end. And if you look closely at what agentic engineering actually requires from a human being, it's basically product management by another name.
That makes total sense. Because if the AI model handles the execution, the human value equation shifts entirely.
Right. Your job is now defining the right problems, setting the strategic direction, and meticulously measuring whether the work being produced actually creates value for the customer.
Which, answers the question a lot of people have been asking lately. Are product manager roles dying?
And they're not. No, they aren't dying. But their scope is drastically changing under the pressure of AI and AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, it's changing how everything gets built.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the recent workflows introduced in Figma. Teams now have ways to go directly from early rough ideas straight into building and production. The entire product lifecycle is compressing at an unbelievable rate.
And we have to acknowledge that compression is taking a very real human toll. Managers are genuinely struggling to keep up with this productivity boom.
Oh, I bet. It's just so much faster.
It's chaotic. To survive, leaders have to fundamentally adapt. They have to set much clearer directions, relentlessly focus their team's attention on what actually matters, and create faster feedback loops.
And they have to do all of that without micromanaging the AI or their human employees.
Exactly, which is the hardest part for most people.
Right. So, okay, let me try this analogy. If AI is this massive high-speed engine that we've just strapped to our companies, humans have essentially just been promoted to being the steering wheel.
I like that.
But are we actually ready for that upgrade, or are managers just getting whiplash right now?
Well, whiplash is very real, but what's fascinating here is that it's largely self-inflicted.
Really? How so?
It happens because managers don't actually want to be the steering wheel. They secretly still want to be the mechanic.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They're clinging to the old habit of micromanaging the execution of the work. They're constantly checking every gear and piston rather than just trusting the engine to do its job. To be an effective steering wheel, you have to let go of the execution. You have to focus your energy entirely on the destination.
That is so true. And focusing on the destination becomes even more critical when we look at who or, well, what is actually doing that execution now, because we're moving to a place where AI agents are literally becoming our digital coworkers.
Yeah, and this isn't just theoretical anymore. Simon Willison pointed out recently that companies like Anthropic and OpenAI have officially found product market fit for enterprise coding and general purpose agents.
Wow, so it's actually adopted at scale now.
Yes. We're talking about tools like Claude Cowork and Codex being deeply integrated into daily workflows. This adoption is being driven by massive, real-world enterprise demand. It effectively puts to rest all those earlier thin anecdotes we kept hearing about AI just being an expensive, failed experiment for businesses.
Yeah, I remember hearing those cost failure stories. But this is a massive structural shift. We're moving away from traditional SaaS tool software as a service into what are being called AI workspaces.
Right.
And the fundamental change here is that work will increasingly happen inside of AI agents, and those agents will be the ones reaching out and clicking the buttons in your SaaS apps for you.
Exactly. The whole interface itself is changing.
To make this super concrete for you listening, let's look at two specific examples from the newsletters. First, there's a tool called OpenPros.
Oh, yeah, this is a great example.
Their whole pitch is that you no longer have to babysit agents. Instead of micromanaging the steps, you give the agent a service level agreement, an SLA in plain English. You just tell it, inbox at 0 by 5 p.m.
And that is your destination.
Right. The runtime environment takes that goal, executes it, actively watches for any drift away from your instructions, and it only pings you when the job is actually done.
That is the perfect example of shifting from execution to judgment. You define the value, an empty inbox by 5 p.m., and the agent just figured out the rest.
But then we have this other example, an internal AI VP of customer success named QB.
QB.
QB was built to close the massive gap between what customers need and the actual capacity of a human customer success team. But the teams building QB found that to make an AI executive actually work, you have to deeply personalize it to your real workflows.
Yeah, it's not just plug and play.
Not at all. You have to roll it out very carefully, and crucially, you have to manage the agent every single day.
Right, and we see similar structural systems with Atlassian's product collection using Rovo AI.
Oh, what do they do?
It automatically captures scattered customer feedback at scale and dynamically turns it into prioritized Jira roadmaps. It shows how structural systems can actually put real customer words behind decisions, but it requires serious oversight.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. If I have to manage an AI VP like QB every single day, and I have to constantly watch out for agent drift, haven't I just swapped out managing a human team for babysitting a digital one?
Well,
I mean, I thought AI was supposed to save me from the overhead of management. There was even an author recently boasting about managing teams without a single sync call because, short calls just disrupt focus. So which is it? Are we free from management or just managing different entities?
okay, I wouldn't call it babysitting.
No.
No, because babysitting implies you're just watching to make sure a toddler doesn't break a lamp.
Yeah.
This is more like calibrating a highly sensitive scientific instrument.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. You don't need a disruptive 30-minute sync call with an AI to ask how its weekend was,
Yeah.
which absolutely saves you that traditional management overhead. But you do need to constantly feed it better data, better goals, and better context. The winners in this new era are going to be the people who deeply understand how to turn generic model output into highly valuable specific work. You're managing the parameters of success, not the physical labor.
Okay, so if that's how we as individuals survive this shift, how do companies survive? Because if powerful agents are now operating seamlessly across these ecosystems, doing all this execution, we have to talk about how a company actually builds a defensible product in this space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how do you avoid just being instantly replaced by the next model update from OpenAI?
This is the existential question for tech right now. And honestly, the reality is brutal. AI apps aren't dead, but thin wrappers absolutely are.
Yeah.
If your whole business is just a light user interface wrapped around a major AI's API, you are extinct. The major AI labs are going to completely own the horizontal tools, things like generic text generation, translation, or basic code completion.
So building a thin wrapper is basically like opening a lemonade stand, but you don't own the lemons, you don't own the sugar, or the cups. OpenAI does.
That's entirely accurate.
To survive, you have to own the neighborhood the stand is in. You have to own a vertical workflow. It's like being the master locksmith for a 100-year-old bank vault. You understand the rusted gears, the weird compliance rules, the history of the specific locks. OpenAI's generic knife cannot pick that lock.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is exactly it. Owning the neighborhood means owning the messy, complex realities of enterprise workflows that foundational models just can't easily replicate out of the box.
Which means owning customer data, governance, integrations, all of it.
Exactly. It includes your proprietary integrations and measurable business outcomes. You have to solve a highly specific, highly complex problem end to end.
Look at what Slack just did with their AI evolution as a prime infrastructure example of this. They recently moved their internal AI setup away from self-managed AWS SageMaker over to managed Amazon Bedrock.
Right. And if you aren't an engineer, that probably sounds like a bunch of jargon.
Yeah, could you break that down for us?
Sure. AWS SageMaker is basically a giant workshop. Amazon gives you the tools, the electricity, and the space, but your engineers still have to build, fine-tune, and maintain the AI machinery yourself.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. It takes a ton of overhead. Amazon Bedrock, on the other hand, is like walking into a finished showroom. The models are already hosted and managed for you. You just plug them into your app.
And by making that switch, Slack solved their scaling and latency issues immediately. They reduced engineering overhead, and they improved efficiency because they could use something called provisioned throughput.
Yeah, and think of provision throughput like renting a dedicated private fast lane on a crowded highway. Instead of competing with everyone else's traffic to get your data processed by the AI, you just pay for guaranteed speed.
So Slack stopped trying to pave the highway themselves and just rented the fast lane.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of a company choosing to focus on the efficiency of their specific application rather than burning resources building horizontal infrastructure.
And this ties directly into a new evaluation framework that tech leaders are using called WAC, which stands for Workflows, Agents, and Context.
Yes, the WAC framework is crucial. It argues that traditional AI benchmarks, like, how well a model scores on a standardized law exam, they matter less and less every day.
Because who cares if the model can pass the bar if it can't figure out your company's messy internal expense reporting?
Exactly. Real-world performance depends entirely on the specific workflow it's embedded in, the autonomy of the agent, and the proprietary context you give it. The only question that actually matters for a business now is how much value does your product create above the default AI baseline?
Right. But building these complex vertical tools is incredibly risky. How do companies release these complex vertical AI tools without breaking everything?
It's a huge challenge.
The Harness Flagship Summit actually highlighted this recently. They talked about how companies like Cursor, Box, and United Airlines are heavily relying on feature flags to experiment safely.
Yeah. For those unfamiliar, a feature flag is basically an on-off switch in your code. It allows you to release a massive new AI feature to maybe just 5% of your users, see how it performs, and instantly turn it off if it hallucinates or breaks without bringing down the whole system.
It lets companies scale their rollout strategies without sacrificing control.
Yes.
And speaking of things breaking, we have to talk about the human element. Because you can have the absolute best AI infrastructure in the world, the most defensible vertical workflow, and the smartest agents. But if human beings reject it, your product fails.
It's so true. The transition to AI is just as much a psychological challenge as it is a technical one. We absolutely cannot lose touch with the human user.
Right. A massive issue right now is why so many AI products lose users immediately after their first try. I mean, the churn is staggering, and the answer is usually not that the underlying AI model is weak.
No, it rarely is.
The churn happens because the adoption design decisions are fundamentally wrong. The newsletter lists 4 main failure modes. Take what product designers call an activation cliff. Ugh, those are brutal.
Yeah. This isn't just about a confusing interface. It's when a user looks at a blank AI prompt box and gets completely paralyzed because they don't know how to ask for what they want. They just bounce.
Right, prompt paralysis.
Exactly. Then there's a trust gap, where the user simply doesn't believe the AI won't mess up their data, so they refuse to click approve. There are also broken correction loops and an agent autonomy ceiling where the AI just isn't allowed to do enough to be useful.
Which is exactly why product leaders must never outsource their customer thinking to LLMs.
Wow.
You cannot ask an AI what your human customers want because an AI doesn't experience prompt paralysis. It doesn't have doubt or trust issues.
Yeah, that is such a good point.
To get real design buy-in to fix these cliffs, teams need to stop relying on generic user personas, like, meet marketing Mary, she's 35 and likes efficiency. Those are way too easily dismissed by stakeholders. Instead, Teams should rely on hard user segmentation. You need to segment by 4 elements: total audience size, the seasonality or time period of the usage, the actual device or tech context, like are they on a cracked smartphone in a warehouse or a dual monitor desktop in a quiet office, and you need to separate new versus returning customers.
It forces you to look at the actual behavior and constraints of real human beings.
And it gets even more granular than that. There's this fascinating method mentioned called discrimination testing.
Oh, this is so important for engineering teams right now.
It asks a brutal question. Can the human user actually perceive the difference in what you built? It weighs the trade-offs between simplicity, accuracy, and participant effort.
Right, because if you spend 3 weeks engineering a slightly better response, maybe shaving milliseconds off of response time, but the end user literally cannot tell that version B is better than version A, was that massive engineering effort actually worth it? Discrimination testing reveals that.
Wow. And, the friction isn't just external with the users. The newsletter dives into the internal struggles of product managers themselves.
Yeah, the human side of management.
Often, PMs tell themselves lies. Specifically, the lie of being powerless against rigid roadmaps, sales promises, or executive decisions. But the reality is they must challenge those assumptions and influence via action.
But when a PM actually starts pushing back, they're going to hit a wall of resistance. That friction is unavoidable. The key is handling conflict strategically. It's only useful if it serves a clear goal. You have to focus on the real issue, anticipate how the other side is going to respond, and critically, you have to stop before the fight itself starts controlling your reactions.
That emotional intelligence is just so key right now. It dictates how teams communicate. Blunt feedback, for example, the newsletter notes, it's highly controversial and really only useful when it comes from someone with clear good intent and proven strong judgment.
Otherwise, it's just destructive ego.
Yeah, exactly. We also see how human nuance creeps into career growth. The nuance of how calibration sessions mess with performance reviews. At senior levels, getting a promotion depends on so much more than just your direct manager support.
Right. It relies on a complex web of human relationships where managers basically debate your value.
And finally, to navigate all of this, the internal politics, the user trust gaps, the AI integration teams have to learn how to quote-unquote sell Point C.
Selling Point C is a brilliant leadership framework. It means you can't just tell your team or your users, we're going to continue existing. To reach a big, long-term goal, you have to paint a concrete, vivid destination of where you will be 12 to 24 months out.
It has to be anchored in the actual needs of the community you serve.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? We have these hyper-advanced LLMs that can write complex enterprise code. They can manage our inboxes autonomously. Yet on the flip side, we have to rely on psychological tools like discrimination testing just to figure out if a human can even tell the difference in what we build.
It's quite the paradox.
Are we over-engineering the AI and completely under-engineering human psychology?
This raises an important question, and it's the core tension of this entire deep dive. What we are learning is that AI is incredible at scaling execution, but AI absolutely cannot scale empathy. It cannot scale trust. And it certainly cannot scale the strategic, visionary leadership required to rally a group of humans and, sell Point C.
Wow. Okay, so to synthesize the journey we just went on today, we started by looking at the death of vibe coding and the stark reality that manual execution is no longer the primary driver of value.
Right.
We explored how AI agents are rapidly becoming our digital coworkers, requiring us to manage them through context and SLAs rather than micromanagement. We unpacked why thin wrapper startups are going extinct and why the future belongs to companies that own complex vertical workflows.
The master locksmiths.
Exactly. And finally, we realized that despite all this technological advancement, the success of any AI product ultimately hinges on profoundly human-centric adoption design, trust building, and emotional intelligence.
The ultimate takeaway for you listening right now is a fundamental reframing of your own career. Your value in this new landscape is no longer measured by how fast you can execute a rote task.
It's in your judgment.
Yes. Your value is in your ability to define the right problems, direct AI to solve them, and utilize your capacity to understand the human nuances, the friction, the trust, the community needs that an LLM simply cannot replicate.
It is a massive shift. But I want to leave you with one final unscripted thought to mull over as you go back to your day. If the future truly belongs to those who manage AI agent with high-level judgment, and all the entry-level doing jobs are entirely automated by AI, how do the next generation of workers actually build that judgment in the first place? How do you learn to be the steering wheel if you've never spent any time being the engine?
Spoken Tech for your ears.